Mayor. My name is Irene Wall. I'm a Seattle resident, long-standing, longer than I can admit, like my whole life. Here's my question to you. Seattle was heralded for its innovation in citizen-led neighborhood planning in the 1990s. Since then, neighborhood planning has drifted away from being comprehensive and grassroots to a staff-driven effort with a limited focus on upzoning to accommodate growth. Do you believe that current Seattle residents in Seattle's diverse neighborhoods should have more say over land use and zoning issues in their neighborhoods?
Easy answer, absolutely. The question is, how does that happen?
Yes, that's a good question.
Yeah, so one way that I think that happens is by we have already public development authorities that are in various neighborhoods that get the opportunity to make decisions about what developments happen in spaces. You know what neighborhood doesn't have a recognized development authority?
Most of them. Are you speaking of PDAs?
Yes, but do you know which one doesn't have one at all?
Tell me.
The Central District.
Morgan Junction.
Morgan Junction might not have one, but the reality is most community members don't know about them, but also the communities most impacted by development right now also do not have them. And so I think making sure that those exist equitably throughout our city and are accessible is one important step. The second is when we do development in other parts of the city, they tend to have these opportunities for community to come out and give voice to it. There's two problems with this. One, it doesn't happen equitably throughout the city, but two, we tend to come in already, as you said, with a top-down plan, and we say to the community, hey, tell us what you think about this plan. And then you all tell us a lot of things that you think about it, and instead of actually changing the plan to accommodate or compromise with community, we move forward and say, well, we gave you public comment. That is not an effective way to govern a city that says it values the voices of the people. And so when we talk about development, especially in a city that needs to develop a vision, Seattle lacks a vision for strategic development. We have been just developing, allowing developers to do whatever they want to. And so we need to work with neighborhoods to have a structure where you all get input into how we preserve the character of the neighborhood, where the density goes, because y'all will know where it's going to be most useful, and then what sort of transportation options need to be included in that density to ensure that transportation moves in lockstep with density so people can get around and we can save our environment. Because if we're not careful, I mean, we're already going to see parts of our city underwater in 50 years. We're going to see a whole lot more of it if we don't get ahead of the environmental issues we're facing.
Would you be willing, if you were mayor, to suspend MHA implementation until this level of either establishing PDAs or some other mechanism for what you believe is a more legitimate grassroots planning effort to happen? Because right now, you know what MHA is going to do, and it's essentially the same zoning changes in all urban villages, which is 37 of them.
It's a great question. Can I ask you a question so I can?
Yes.
What do you think we can do in order to move quickly on moving the private market towards building affordable housing if we suspend that plan now that's already been put in place but requires some reworking?
Well, that's a leadership question for the mayor, but you could redo the grand bargain. You could decide it ain't grand enough and we're going to go back, because what are the developers could continue to develop. They will, and in theory, there's a lot of, well, we're just going to build more and therefore there'll be a trickle down and certain new stuff will be taken over by the wealthier folks, leaving the Wallingford 8-unit apartments still available. I don't necessarily believe that, but do you think there is room to modify the MHA program?
So this is how I was going to answer your question. I wanted to see where you were at. I think that HOLA and MHA have to absolutely be reworked. It was not a grand bargain. It was the great developer free ride. And so we need to ensure that impact fees are a part of the structure, because the infrastructure of our city is suffering when we have rapid development. And then also, when we're only asking 2% on South Lake Union, what we're saying is Paul Allen gets to build his own small city within a larger city that benefits him but serves absolutely no one else. And so I wouldn't say I would suspend it, but what I will say is I'm 100% committed to reworking it and hearing the voices of community members as to where we can strategically put density in neighborhoods that are going to be facing some major changes. But I do believe the density has to be shared across the city. Otherwise, we'll see neighborhoods like Rainier Beach Central District and Ballard be the only ones that bear the brunt of development that I think could eventually benefit us all.
I haven't asked this variant of others, but I will ask it of you. There's a theory here, maybe it's just mine, but if the spigot for development is open equally everywhere, what we have seen is certain neighborhoods do not get the benefit of development, others get overwhelmed. We've heard the phrase Ballardization. How about something like that? You know, you turn the spigot off in some areas that are overdeveloping in order to push the development into the areas that are underperforming.
Yes.
I 100% check. I 100% agree with you that we put way too much development in places like Ballard. We have not shared it equitably across the board, and so it is essential that in some places where we've already pushed people out, that we do turn the spigot off and move it to other areas of the city.
Do you think that you could negotiate with the city's developers to agree to a deal like that for a certain period of time until this equity is reestablished?
I do think, I do think we can negotiate with our developers. Check. Oh, there we go. But can I just say one?
Sure.
We need a market intervention strategy. Using the private market as the only way that we address affordability in our city is actually going to put us in we're going to end up in the same position. It's not going to change. So we need to deal with speculative capital, and we need to leverage the city's resources to actually build our own public housing, and then we need to redefine what affordable means. The median income of the city is going to be $100,000 next year. 60% of $100,000 is $60,000. That's not affordable for most of us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Wow.